Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have one quick administrative announcement before we hand it over to our speakers to kick off the session. This session has been pre-qualified to support continuing education requirements and several cybersecurity certifications. If you are a member seeking attendance documentation, please be sure to scan your badge at the scanner located in the back of the seating area at the conclusion of this session. Scanners shut off 15 minutes post-session, so please get your badge scanned before networking with the speakers. Also note that to qualify for CEUs and CPEs, the session must run a full 60 minutes. That 60 minutes can include Q&A. So please have questions ready for the speaker to fill the time requirement. Full details for continuing education program are available in the TechNet Cyber app and the conference website. Thank you, and now over to our speakers.
Hello, is this thing on? All right, good. Good morning, everyone. I'll talk slow so we can get to the whole 60 minutes, right? Hi, my name's Les Benito. I'm the cloud lead for the department for DoD.
I'm Jonathan Tame. I'm the principal advisor to cloud, supporting Les and the cloud and software modernization team.
So today I want to talk about a critical initiative for the DoD, and that's the DoD Cloud Financial Operations strategy, FinOps strategy. So as outlined in the CIO memorandum dated 24 September, the adoption of commercial cloud capabilities remains fundamental to modernization across the department. Our software modernization strategy emphasizes this point, noting that modernization is needed as warfare becomes digitally dependent. By partnering with commercial cloud service providers, DoD gains access to global compute infrastructure, continuous pipeline of innovative services, and the capacity needed to mature artificial intelligence capabilities at a pace we couldn't achieve alone. However, as cloud adoption and dependence continues to increase, so too will the costs. With military budgets constrained by uncertainty in the balance of world power, it is compelled for the department to become a smarter user and buyer of cloud. We must ensure the delivery of services while achieving the best fiscal value. Historically, cloud migrations have used various purchasing mechanisms, leading to unique service pricing, inconsistent terms, varying approaches to managing provisioned resources, and inefficient uses of those resources. This has hindered an enterprise understanding of cloud cost and impact, and potentially resulting in excessive cost, wasteful spending, and delays in mission attainment. This is where the DoD FinOps strategy comes in. So our strategy provides, provides direction for enabling cloud, cost management, and optimization for better investment. Budgetary and architectural decisions. It leverages industry-recognized best practices and is specifically tailored for the DoD. At its core, this strategy introduces the concept of FinOps to the department, drawing from the FinOps Foundation, which you can visit their website at finops.org. Right? And really, FinOps is defined as an operational framework and cultural practice which maximizes the business value of cloud, enables timely data-driven decision-making, and creates financial accountability through collaboration between engineering, finance, and business teams. The strategy describes a desired outcome, provide a DoD-tailored FinOps framework, and identify strategic imperatives and associated actions to enable an enterprise understanding of cloud costs and impact. It charts a path forward that will allow the department to be a better user and buyer of cloud services. The desired outcome of implementing the strategy is to achieve a single pane of glass that intuitively illustrates cloud cost, usage, and impact across the DoD components. This capability will integrate data from different sources and present it in a meaningful way, allowing leadership and individual components to track cloud costs in relationship to utilization. Oops, that totally jumped on me, sorry about that. Visualize consolidated enterprise-level trends in cloud spend, and foster collaboration between finance, operations, and engineering teams to align spending with business priorities and optimize costs. So this alliance will enable DoD to identify areas for optimization, improving transparency, accountability, negotiating power, and rationalization efforts. Achieving this starts with the consolidation of data under established standards, security, and tags, leading to the visualization of metrics and trends for meaningful decision-making and continuous improvement. The DoD FinOps framework itself is based on the FinOps framework from the FinOps Foundation, and it is tailored for the DoD and functions as a guidepost for smart cloud use and buying, reflecting the department's unique mission focus and implementation environment. The key principles include collaboration and ownership is required. Successful FinOps needs a whole of department approach with everyone taking ownership of cloud use and spend, pushing accountability and empowerment to all stakeholders. Secondly, decisions driven by mission value. Investments decisions are based on value to the mission, balancing cost, quality, and speed. Next, we have accessible and timely FinOps data. Consistent visibility of data is needed at all organizational levels. Though visibility may vary by level, right? An enterprise champion is a must. Success comes from when FinOps impact decisions and improves cloud use and cloud trends, cost trends driven and practiced at the enterprise level. And cost model creativity is encouraged. DoD must explore and exercise new ways to pay for the cloud, taking advantage of various provider cost models, despite legal and policy limitations, which some of you might have run into and we are trying to overcome. The strategy organizes strategic imperatives around the FinOps framework phases, forming an infinite loop intended for continuous improvement. So these phases include inform. We start with the inform phase. This phase is about obtaining visibility of cloud cost and utilization data. Currently, there is no consistent method for reporting this data. Actions here involve establishing a cloud cost and utilization reporting standard in alignment with industry standards like Focus and coupled with standard user-defined tags. The next phase is the optimize phase. Once data visibility is achieved, the next step is defining and displaying metrics for optimization. Value for the department is measured in mission impact, not just revenue. Actions include developing key performance indicators and metrics based on cost optimization drivers, establishing efficiency benchmarks, budget alerts, and forecasting practices. This also involves defining pricing models and targets to promote better behavior and deploying an enterprise-level capability to share optimization insights, track trends, and discover opportunities. Finally, in the operate phase, why does it keep doing this? The final phase is integrating insights into decision-making. Data and metrics are only useful if they shape and influence decisions at all levels. Key actions involve increasing DoD FinOps knowledge and training, leveraging resources from the FinOps Foundation. Insights must be integrated into appropriate governance forums, and existing processes like IT portfolio management, budgeting, and acquisition. This positions the DoD for continuous cloud readiness in support of modern warfare. So governance of the strategy falls under the ECMB, the Enterprise Cloud Management Board, which will facilitate component participation and integrate the FinOps framework into enterprise decisions. The ECMB will be key in driving engagement from the top. It is important to understand that DoD Cloud FinOps strategy is not a new separate effort. It aligns with the overarching vision of the DoD software modernization strategy and implementation plan, and complements existing cloud activities. It is another critical piece in maintaining an always ready, modern information enterprise. So successful FinOps across departments starts with awareness. This strategy serves as a communication piece to provide common understanding of FinOps and the necessary actions. It is critical because the reliance on cloud to enable software capabilities for offensive and defensive functions continues to grow, and the department cannot afford unchecked spend in the face of complicated world events. Realization of FinOps occurs when insights are integrated into enterprise decision-making, leading to changes in behavior. This requires DoD components, engagement driven by the ECMB from the top, and energized by working with early adopters from the bottom. The intended audience of the strategy includes those responsible for implementing cloud strategies, mission owners, and engineers. It is our hope that upon reading the strategy, the audience should have a general understanding of FinOps as applied to DoD, be aware of the necessary actions, and feel personal responsibility for smart management of cloud going forward. So with that, now that you guys have an understanding of what we're talking about and what we mean by FinOps, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think the intent was to really do some Q&A. FinOps is a relatively new effort. While FinOps itself is not new at the DoD CIO level, FinOps is a relatively new activity. As Les said, we published a strategy a couple months ago, and we're standing up a FinOps working group at the DoD CIO level, which Les will lead, and our team, the DoD CIO Cloud team, manages. The ECMB, the Enterprise Cloud Management Board, Les's team is the executive secretariat for that. So under Les's umbrella and under his purview are a lot of these supporting activities, right? We're doing a lot of cloud rationalization, trying to help DoD components understand how best to move to the cloud, where it's appropriate. And we want to be cloud smart, not just cloud. And then FinOps is a supporting component of that to ensure that once we move folks to the cloud, that's not a one and done, you're on your own, figure it out, good luck. Because we all have heard the horror stories. Then people get a $1 million a month bill and they don't know what to do with that, and they panic and turn it all off, and that impacts mission. So I think in our initial meetings we've had a fair amount of not confusion but just uncertainty about what FinOps really means. So we wanted to come here and kind of give a little bit of a FinOps 101 and just provide some orientation as to where we're headed. And then open it up really for any discussion. We are working on a MVP or a pilot program with DISA to try and just prove this out. Right? The objective is let's just do it and see what we get. There's a ton of data that comes with FinOps. If you go look at the focus specification from the FinOps Foundation, it's massive, and that's because the specification really supports a whole host of personas or capabilities across an organization. Some of that may be cost avoidance, some of that may be cost optimization, some of that may be capacity management, right? So in a tool that's designed to affect a lot of different capabilities and users, you expect a high degree of flexibility, and with that flexibility comes a lot of uncertainty. So I would say that our initial efforts have really been, we've kind of taken a step back and said, let's be a little bit more foundational and make sure that we get everybody on the same page, and then we can all move forward together, and that's really what we're doing with DISA right now. But to that end, I think we're really kind of interested in feedback and questions and understanding where the rest of the department is in terms of FinOps and where there are maybe some understanding, some knowledge gaps, right, where we can help kind of fill those things in.
I think in general, understanding how cloud works and the way cloud is built, and the fact that it can be changed quickly over time, right? And how the spend can change. It's not something that DoD is very accustomed to. DoD is very accustomed to, okay, this is how much I'm going to spend, and I've got a 3-year contract in place and my budget, and I know exactly how much I'm going to spend. But well, in reality, if you deploy things the wrong way, or if you aren't paying attention, your costs can run away from you. And at the same time, if you're smart about it, you can realize some very, very impressive savings. So understanding it, initially just getting the data and being able to visualize it, to actually understand what the spend looks like, who's spending what, who is doing it right, who isn't. And for those that aren't doing it right, can we help them to do it better, right? And that's really the key. And from the DoD CIO perspective, we talked about the focus standard. There are a lot of fields and a lot of data there. We don't need all that data at our level, but down at the operational level, yeah, that's the kind of things that are very important. And when you look at the maturity, the different maturities of FinOps savvy organizations, you start from the point of just understanding costs, understanding against your budget, and how to react accordingly. But then all the way down to the point where really advanced organizations are able to tell you how much something is going to cost before a piece of software code is deployed through the pipeline. like as they're deploying their software through their CI/CD pipeline, in their DevOps tooling, it actually gives them what it's going to cost before they actually deploy it. Like, you want to deploy this and use these capabilities and these services, it's going to cost you this much money. Are you good with that? And that could set up alerts, right? So that could actually go and so, engineers are engineering, they're focused on getting the functionality working, and they're not really thinking about cost sometimes, but it could send something to the people that do care about cost and say, whoa, before you deploy that, can we trim back a little bit? Can we change things a little bit? Because we're going to blow our budget in the first month if we deploy it as is, right? So that really is, we'd love to get to that point. I mean, that's a very advanced version of, using FinOps in real-world operational capabilities, but we got to start somewhere. That's the bottom line. There are organizations that are very advanced already, that are already doing great things with it, but there are other organizations that unfortunately are not, and are trying to learn and are trying to get their head around it. So we're trying to kind of help guide and set some standards so that we can all kind of look at it the same way and have the same view of things.
So with that, if you have questions, we've been instructed there's a microphone there. We would ask that folks step up so that everybody can hear.
Please. We got to go 60 minutes, guys, so lots of questions. No CPE points.
We'll take multi-part questions.
That part has 4 parts.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I just hold it. Oh, there we go. Now everybody else that comes up after me is going to have to bend over.
Okay.
Gina Messersmith.
Hello,
From the Ag Government Services. So I have a question about the working group.
Mm-hmm.
What is your desired outcome for the working group? What format is it going to be, and who are the participants going to be?
So the working group is going to be made up of representatives from the services and the components, DoD components that are going to. The intent of the working group is to help us establish the right standards and the right mechanisms for us to move forward and be able to unify this across the department. We want them to come with lessons learned that they've got. I mean, some of them have great lessons that they've already started working on. And there are others that maybe have needs that they really have to get after, right? So our idea is to get them together and get to a good working tool and a good working solution for us to be able to execute. That's really ultimately what it is. And it's a subgroup. It's overseen by the ECMB, the Enterprise Cloud Management Board. So it is a working group underneath that board. And we've already started to get folks assigned to be part of the working group. Does that answer your question?
I would just add to that, Les has also done some outreach at the executive level with the 4 CSPs under JDBCC. They have expressed an interest in being a part of the working group. We're still trying to figure out what that partnership looks like, but there is a desire to bring industry in on that, since they are a key component to the, getting the data from the CSPs. It would be helpful to have them in the room. All 4 of those CSPs have adopted the Focus Specification 1.0. There is a 1.1. The working group will I think, spend some time kind of understanding where the current state of FinOps is across the CSPs as well as across the department, and then help drive more adoption and really more smart adoption. To Les's point earlier, the FinOps specification is huge. There's not. We had one of our guys pull data down for like a week, and it was like 60 gigabytes or something. So our desire is not to take all the data for every cloud instance across all of DoD and store that somewhere and create a dashboard, because we would very quickly crash any service. Yeah, we would be defeating our own FinOps goals of being smart about cost.
Our storage costs would go out the window and blow it in a month.
So I would say that the other objective around the FinOps working group is to sort of help align folks with what their data needs are, right? And make sure that we're not, in the spirit of implementing FinOps, that we're not violating the very spirit of FinOps. So like Les said, at the DoD CIO level, and we're starting with JDBCC, since that's kind of our big focus from an enterprise cloud perspective. We want to implement FinOps with the JWCC reporting. We get all the task order data. The JWCC PMO does a fantastic job of maintaining that. We have a dashboard inside Salesforce that they use for reporting. So we want to ingest all that FinOps data, the relevant FinOps data, to complement the task order data so that we can see sort of how we're doing, especially utilization. We have a congressional requirement. DoD CIO has a congressional requirement in the FY25 NDAA, Section 1505, for anybody who's interested. And we're being asked to report on utilization of cloud services across the department. So this is one of the ways at which we want to get at that data intelligently. And so we're not, asking people to export CSV files in Excel, and we got people spending, nights and weekends trying to compile all this data and normalize it and get it into some reportable format. The FinOps Foundation has kind of solved that problem for us. Now we just have to do the last step of bringing all that data together and putting it into a digestible visual format.
And I do want to emphasize something that Jonathan said, that industry is a key part of this being successful. Us working with the CSPs is very important. They've been doing it for a while. They have other customers that are asking and looking at the same data. So lessons learned from them are also very valuable for us. Yes.
Cynthia Hinton, DISA.
Our guy's coming.
He's coming.
No, it's on.
There you go.
We talked so long the microphone gave up.
It timed out.
Cynthia Hinton, DISA, J5. So I have a couple of questions, and you may have answered them, but I had walked away. So is this FinOps strategy, is this only focusing on cloud?
Yes, this is the cloud FinOps strategy. That's correct.
Okay. And then in terms of other ways we could be leveraging this, is there any consideration about leveraging the TBM methodology for the FinOps, the technology business modernization?
I'm actually not familiar with TBM.
I'm vaguely aware of it. I think there's some crossover and the two efforts support each other. I don't know. I'm not smart enough on TBM to speak eloquently about where they maybe diverge, but I think that's a great topic. This is one of the many things that we wanted to stand up a working group to address, so the folks can bring those kinds of things to the broader community, and then as a community to include the CSPs. We can spend a little bit of time digging into those kinds of things, and really, we want to make sure that we're putting the best tools in place and the best practice in place for the department without being so prescriptive that we have missed something. So we're always open to suggestions on how to do things differently or better. Hybrid is a key word these days, and we really like hybrid approaches. As an example, in terms of FinOps tools, we are Air Force Cloud One shared with us a fairly in-depth assessment that they did across a lot of FinOps tools. We're going to consider that, but we also want the DoD FinOps working group to do sort of a similar assessment and leverage previous assessments that organizations have done, and with the intent to provide a recommendation, and if there's a strong enough desire across the department for DoD to down select to a single tool, fine, but I think the instinct is let's have, for those organizations that don't have FinOps certified people or haven't done FinOps training or just don't have the capacity to lean into that, let's try and give them as much of a playbook for how to get up and running and as much support to do that so that they can do so with minimal lift. And for the folks that have that expertise organic to their organization, we want to leave them empowered to kind of do that how they want, so long as they're meeting whatever the core requirements are at a DoD level, so that the department leadership has the insights that they need on cloud specifically for now. But that's the underlying goal. And so I would invite you. We have a number of folks across DISA. If you want to hang out afterwards and make sure we have your name. We would love to invite you and anyone else from J5. We certainly have a lot of participation from J9. We've got some folks from J6 that have been interested in attending. But the intent is to, kind of to the original question from Gina, the intent is to really make this as open forum as possible. There might have to be some government-only segments, but we'll schedule those as necessary. But for the most part, the desire at our level is let's hear from as many people as possible. A, that creates a lot of buy-in, but B, it ensures that we've heard the maximum number of ideas, and then we can really have some debate about how best the department can move forward.
Thank you. I was going to offer the same to touch base afterwards.
Perfect.
I do have a couple more. Is
Please.
the strategy published now?
Yes, it is up on the DoD CIO
Library.
Mhm.
Awesome. And then in terms of FinOps and what you could see for potential goals going forward, how would you see FinOps working with coalition partners? Because that's going to be the next thing with MPEs and all of that nature. How would you see working with coalition partners on that?
That's tomorrow. I got to
That's
think about
FinOps.
that tomorrow.
That's the 400 series. We're in FinOps
I
101.
need to get all the data first.
No, understood.
No, but that's part of the mission, right? That's how we operate. So we do have to think about that because you're right. I mean, we could be sharing an environment with a coalition partner, and they don't have the same practices or the same disciplines, and they end up, blowing the budget, right? For lack of a better term.
And on that topic, I would expect, just given the involvement that we've had with some of our foreign partners and allies in the past couple of years around JWCC and cloud in general, and I can't tell you the number of countries that we have had requests from for lessons learned on JWCC. We've had numerous meetings with the JWCC team and DoD CIO around, how they should think about architecting their enterprise cloud approach. I think as we met with the Australian CIO team recently, they were very interested in what we were doing with FinOps from an awareness standpoint, but I think everybody's kind of waiting to see what we do. And as we get a little further down the path, I expect that we'll see similar engagement requests for lessons learned and how has the department implemented this. So I think there will be opportunities there to drive some of that, similar to an MPE kind of engagement. Let's think about FinOps from a global perspective and a military, a partner and an ally perspective, and it really kind of becomes a part of CJADC2.
Absolutely.
I can tell you that. So I'm helping NATO to write their cloud policy, and that is a topic for sure, right? It's something that they're thinking about as well. So they're definitely further behind than us from a cloud perspective and even from a policy perspective, but it's already there, right? They're already thinking about it as well. So
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Asad Jabbar from McKinsey & Company. We serve a lot of private sector clients on FinOps, so happy to share some best practices. The question that I had is, a lot of our clients struggle with the ROI of cost to what the value is, right? So if you take a step back, cloud has many business drivers, right? But one of supposedly is elasticity and agility for services.
Right.
So if you think of like all the new things that are coming with AI and so many other advanced technologies, it's like, how can you figure out what is still worth the time?
Right.
What is the right ROI? So love to get your take on how you're thinking about that. I know it's an open-ended question,
Yeah.
but like when you think of the cost and the FinOps side, but the traceability of what ROI is and what net new services come and how you constantly kind of budget that in
Sure.
terms of new services that'll add business value and mission value versus cost.
and balance that against we want to try the cool new thing that just came out.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think, again,
Never
like
done
you know,
that.
a decade ago, we were promised that cloud was going to be a cost saver, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it turned out, well, maybe that's not the case.
No.
And now you're seeing so many similar things about these new services, and it's really hard for business owners and mission owners to balance that.
Right.
Like what is value add versus the cost, the way you do in the hardware world, right? It's much easier.
Right.
And in the digital world, it's much harder to find that. So that's something we've talked a lot with private sector clients about.
Well,
Love to get your take.
Well, so when it comes to compute and store, at the very basic IaaS level, right, it's not very different than your standard hardware, ROI and impact that you're looking at. But really, it changes significantly when you start looking at the services and the PaaS services and SaaS services, right, and things like AI and you name it, right. It's not so easy to understand. First of all, because sometimes it takes a little bit just to understand the cost model. Like, wait, so every time I ask a question, it's going to charge me, right? That sort of thing, right? So even understanding what the costs look like and being able to control it, and ultimately, operationally, you need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve here. What's the goal going into this, so that you know that you're actually achieving that and understanding that. But again, really, just getting the data and putting it in front of folks is starting these conversations that weren't happening before. And that's I think one of the key takeaways here is that we need to talk about it and understand what it is that we're looking at, and the fact that we can control it. It's not this uncontrollable thing that when we use cloud and we're going to spend all our money and we can't control it. No, it's absolutely not the case. You can control it, but you have to be smart about it. So it really is about education primarily, right? And helping folks understand, and not just the engineers, not just the mission owners, but the financial folks, the business teams, the acquisition side of the house, right? The contracting, all those folks better understand how it works and how it can be done effectively. Because you could have somebody put out a really bad contract that is very unfavorable for the DoD, but then you can have somebody who understands these capabilities and understands the nuance that can really write a better contract that takes advantage of that and gets the discounts in the right way, right? And that's where we need to get to.
Yeah, I think ROI is always an interesting topic inside government, right? It's a hard calculation. Doesn't make it less necessary. It just brings complexity with it, and I think that kind of gets to a more advanced implementation of FinOps. And FinOps isn't, we've said this a couple times. FinOps isn't really new. The term is new, but this is just the evolution of things like capacity management. When in data center days, right? Mm-hmm. Or cloud optimization was, I think, the version of that prior to this. And so this is the evolution of a desire to, yes, control costs and maybe have some cost savings. I think those are noble goals, but I think there's also a more the evolution of what now is FinOps. I think also represents kind of a better understanding of where to align resources, right? And so you get some benefits in a really advanced form of this, right? And start to enable some automation based on your FinOps reporting, where you can start to, dial up or dial down utilization based on real-time utilization data, and you can gain optimization in an automated fashion. And I think with AI on the cusp of being an enabler for everything else, FinOps just becomes an enabler for that sort of smart capacity management. And so it just makes, I think there's an opportunity here. FinOps represents, in my mind, just a better set of defined standards to collect data and use that data to drive decision making, whatever the decision making might be. And I think it supports a lot of decision makers. But let's just be smarter about our hardware and our software utilization, whether we own that hardware or not, right? We're paying for it either way. And let's just make sure that we're doing the best we can with what we've got, powered by data, and then you know what you know. And it's not best guess. It's not let's say we're going to spend $100,000 this month and pray that we hit that number, right? Because that's kind of what it's been in the past. And our contracting mechanisms are really kind of set up that way, right? It's a best guess approach, and I think this represents an opportunity to do a pivot to something that's far more data driven and real time.
I can tell you that already the conversations have gone in directions that I didn't think they were going to go. And I'll give you an example, right? Reserved instances, right? Everybody's familiar with reserved instances. And the level of savings that are available if we can do them. However, the real savings are when you do the multi-year reserved instances. And let's be honest, you're setting up a mission, a very critical business mission. It's going to be there for a while. However, the acquisition laws in place today do not allow us, do not allow us to do it. So we're actually having conversations about legislative changes. And that wouldn't have happened until we started talking about this and actually had these conversations. So that I'm seeing some impact already. So that's great. And we haven't even really gotten started.
Yeah. and to that point, I think having data, bringing data to legislators and Congress and saying, oh, by the way, here's all the due diligence that supports what we're asking for in terms of very hard change, right? Rewriting laws is not an easy task. Altering the FAR and subsequently the DFARs is not impossible, but it's difficult. The more data you bring to bear on that argument, I think it just strengthens the argument to do so, and that's, I think, one of the benefits.
Well, especially when you look at the fact that when you're looking at a CapEx model and what you used to do before, right? You'd buy it for multi-year purchases, right, up front, but you can't really do it in the cloud, right? So let's fix that, right? Let's make that right.
No, I just feel like just the financial transparency, just doing it, also alerts the supply side to,
100%.
Get more better in terms of negotiating, and it just sets the playing field in a much better way. So thank you.
Agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. Anybody else?
Question.
Hi, how are you? Jenny with Jazen. You mentioned acquisition, right? And this is new to me, so if this question has already been answered,
No,
I
please.
apologize. Are you guys looking to be implementing some of these standards in the early stages of the sectors, getting the services, or is it something that you guys are acquiring the data once they're using it and adjusting there? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I'm following. I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think for sure there are existing contractual vehicles in place, and we're trying to add FinOps to them to gain transparency. JWCC is a prime example of that, right? When they stood up JWCC a couple years ago, FinOps wasn't really, we weren't talking about FinOps at the department level. That didn't prevent them from including some transparency language about reporting on data, but they didn't have a standard that they could point to, and now that we do, right? So as we look at the successor to JWCC, which we're calling JWCC Next, FinOps is going to be baked into that up front, right? And that really provides a level of, to the last gentleman's point, that provides a level of not just transparency, but certainty for the CSPs, because now they know what's being expected of them. Whereas at the moment, we're talking about, the CSPs have all adopted the focus specification, but as we've talked to the program office folks, we're getting some discrepancies about what that reporting actually looks like. So yes, it's been adopted, but has it been fully implemented? We're not sure yet. So there's an opportunity here by putting these things into contracts up front and saying you must meet. This is one of the outputs that we hope to have with the working group, is to define for the acquisition community a set of standards that they can include as they move forward on new contracts. Here's the kind of FinOps reporting data that we're expecting at the DoD CIO level, or at the agency director level, or at the program management level, so that those providers can then make sure that they're meeting that contractually, and that just helps all of us. Right? Then the acquisition vehicle becomes a forcing function for imposing these standards and making sure that people are adopting them the way that we wanted them adopted. It just helps everybody. Can you
Sorry,
please.
I couldn't hear you.
It's okay. You mentioned something key, but there's going to be a lot of CSOs being used. How is that going to go into those requirements?
You mean like the service offerings from the cloud?
The commercial solutions offerings?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so they're all, it's all inclusive of whatever's part of the catalog for that particular vendor, right? So the CSP, for example, the cloud service provider, has 100 different services that they provide. They have to have that data for all those services.
And there is I'm still learning on the FinOps stuff. Our FinOps SME couldn't make it today, so he probably could have gone into more detail on this. But there are discussions about how deep do you go in terms of FinOps data, right? Do you stay at the infrastructure level, right, or do you go all the way down to like an application level? And I think again, we haven't really started. Like I think we've scheduled the first working group meeting. We haven't even had it yet. So there's some work to be done around that. But I don't think there's a desire to prescribe to folks how to do that. It's more of an awareness. Like, here's the FinOps specification. Organizations across DoD, go explore this, and let's have some discussions about what's working for folks and what's not before we write a DoD instruction or DoD guidance or anything. We want to learn, right? And we want to understand first.
If you go to FinOps Foundation website, FinOps I want to say it's .org. Is it?
I think it's FinOpsFoundation.org. Just Google it.
Just Google it. But I will tell you that they have user scenarios there. So, like, if you're a business user and you want more information about businesses, it tells you these are the fields that you should probably be pulling or looking at. If you are an engineer, these are the fields that you should be looking at to pull and it gives you some sample data on what that looks like, which is interesting, right? And it helps you kind of look at it and go, oh, well, that wasn't what I was expecting at all, right? Or, oh, yes, this is exactly right. So it actually is helpful to help start thinking through what's available. And at the end of the day, all that data is available. It's just how much of it do you want? Because like we said, it can get very big very quickly, especially depending on the size of your organization and the usage. All right? Go.
Please, yeah.
So what would be a good way for industry to stay abreast if you guys decide to include them in a working group? How do we get that communication from you guys?
Well, so we will continue to push out the information as we are working through the different phases of it. We have data calls that we have to push out, that we are required to push out on a regular basis. Look for, hopefully I'll come back and speak and tell you how it's going.
I would,
if I still have a job, right?
Yeah. We may find some FinOps data that suggests that less could be a cost savings.
That's right, cost-saving expert. That's right.
Or John.
Or John.
Who knows? I would add, I think, again, we're in kind of a sponge mode, right? We're really trying to collect feedback and gauge interest from across, both industry and government sectors. So if that is, I think there's some, email addresses, please, if that's something you want to, it helps us to hear requests from the community. There's cloud.mil website that no one's really doing anything with. There's been some discussion about us taking that over. Yeah. I don't know that we have a ton of support for that at the moment, but if this is something, if the cloud FinOps work is something that would be of interest to the community, then and there's a strong demand signal for that, then we'll go, if it's not cloud.mil, then we'll go create cloudfinops.mil, right? Like we have a lot of options for how we distribute information. And so it's just trying to figure out what's within our capacity and what makes the most sense for the community.
And there's definitely opportunity for industry, right? If you are FinOps experts out there, the DoD needs you, right? They need to learn. They need to understand it better. That there is absolutely a big need for the education side of this across the department. So that's for sure. Yeah.
So if there's like a best practice, FinOps best practice that we wanted the industry share back to you, is it best to share?
Yeah, please.
For now, yeah.
Yeah, because we would then bring it into the working group as an example and have those conversations for sure.
And again, if there's a strong enough desire, I think we could certainly create, maybe once a quarter, the working group can have an open, public meeting where anybody can join and we can, take questions and input from a broad community versus kind of the more closed community.
Yeah.
So, sir,
We can't do this alone. We know that.
that's right.
We can't.
Hey, Matt Fisher from ServiceNow. I want to support you with your FinOps and also getting to your 60-minute.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I realize this is very early in the evolution, but I'm hearing a couple of clues here. It sounds like, from a technology perspective, you're willing to let agencies use their existing technologies or fill the gaps when it comes to cloud management, software asset management, et cetera. And you've made a couple of jokes I think clarifies this. You're really looking for the FinOps results coming out,
Data.
not trying to create a giant central data where all the
No.
instrumentation is feeding up.
No. We want the data and the output of the data, right? The analysis of the data.
Right.
But we don't want a giant data pool to store all this data and have one centralized location for everybody to do this job. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's too big for the department.
And so, I understand that right now you're responding to the NDAA requirements, and there is strategy. At some point, this will become policy once the strategy is matured to a point, I presume?
Maybe.
We're not sure yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I think the
A little too early.
standards will be, put out there as what we're saying. We'll publish the standards, right, for everyone to use. But we need to look at what that policy looks like. I'm a big fan of policy for the right reasons, not just a lot of policy to put it out, because we know how that works, right?
But sometimes policy really helps
It
strategy.
does. And I think in the case of the standards and kind of unifying the DoD, absolutely. I think it makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Any other questions? Oh, maybe one more?
We're doing great on time. You guys have done.
Yeah.
This has been great engagement. Anybody else?
Going once?
You're all FinOpsed out.
So to get to 60 minutes, do we have to do like an interpretive dance up here or something?
I don't know. Yeah,
Turn the cameras
we're
off.
definitely getting fired if that's what we've.
Oh, wait, I have a question here.
All right, just to help you guys run out the clock.
Thank you.
Jason March, FinOps certified practitioner.
Excellent.
Thank you. I feel like we've solved some of these challenges that we were facing early in this journey, right? Like right-sizing instances, turning off the lights when you leave the room.
You say that.
Shutting down non-prod when you're not using, not entirely, but we've identified and isolated the problem.
Yes, you've identified them, yes.
Les, you were talking about procurements, right? Rapid bundling RIs, bundling savings plans. John, you mentioned like how far do we go, right? Do we go into the application layer? This is a observation wrapped up as a question. I think there's a world where we extend that into the PaaS and the SaaS portfolios as well, because there are underlying compute services that live there, as well as licenses, subscription agreements. So I feel like getting beyond just the Excel spreadsheets and looking at the spend,
Yes.
because we can get super wrapped up in that, right? Like we spend all day long looking at these cost and usage reports. How do we implement and activate that in a way that delivers meaningful capability? Because in some cases, cost doesn't matter, right? If you're running a mission critical app, who cares how much I mean, if there's lives,
Yes. But at the same time, I don't know any organization has an unlimited budget, right?
Yeah, right.
At the end of the day, right?
No, fair point.
So it's about driving action, right? And being able to make smarter decisions, right? Because you can get to the same thing and do it better, smarter, and not just wasteful spending. To be frank, sometimes it's just they don't turn things off when they don't need them, sort of thing.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. When it comes to PaaS and SaaS, that's absolutely included, right? That's all part of the cloud spend, right? And licensing. It's all there, right? With third-party marketplace, that opens up a huge amount of spending and costs that are included as part of the overall cloud expenditures.
Right. And how do you
by the way,
exploit
the
that to
license-
retire commits and
Yeah.
get into those discount tiers and really get into that juicy, yummy, savings that you can harvest?
Right, and just to touch on licensing, for example, I mean, think about the fact that you're spinning things up and shutting them down from a licensing perspective. That's very different than I've just bought a Office license for the year, right? It's different, and the way they operate is different, and how you get billed for it is different.
And
So-
how different hyperscalers, the different
Exactly,
behaviors
exactly
with those services.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of that is important, and yeah, we've understood and we get that there's right and wrong ways to do it, but we haven't really gone over that final step of fixing the problem and really adjusting behavior and decision making based on that. It's always after the fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're looking in the rearview mirror. How do you forecast this?
Exactly.
And how do you get in front of it? How do you look at your business cycle when you see compute demand that's going to spike?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, there's also, let's be real. The department and acquisition is very guilty of this, but the department is fairly risk adverse, and nobody likes to do something for the first time.
Right.
If you can show them a way that it's been done and no one got fired, they will replicate that. Mostly, they will replicate that over and over and over again. And so I think there's the desire at the DoD CIO level is let's create that, right? The repeatable and scalable business model for FinOps that folks can take and run with. And we've already taken care of the standards, and we've already taken care of the making sure that data can move where it needs to move, and that people have an easily replicable visualization model, a playbook. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I think the broader environmental conditions that we're under right now, to be more efficient, to make change, to drive this transformation. If we're going to figure it out, now is the time to figure it out.
Exactly. You're right. We have the drivers right now to make it happen.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you open-ended questions, so we'll fill up some more time. Jason Turse, currently with Akamai Technologies, previously with AWS. I think when I was in uniform, was one of the earliest cloud accounts in 2014, stood up an AWS environment, stood up a C2S environment, so everything you're describing is very near and dear to my heart. My personal experience, though, was setting up a DevSecOps factory for a component of SOCOM back in 2015. I saw FinOps at the time as overlapping and integrated with DevOps.
100%.
Yeah. So the open-ended question is, to what extent do you see FinOps integrating, and then what practical steps are you taking to integrate your vision for FinOps standards with DevSecOps standards?
Yeah, so there are big software factories across the department, which you're probably familiar with, that are working those DevSecOps tools and everything that are out there. But I can tell you that the more advanced and the really mature DevOps, not necessarily in DoD yet, they're getting there, but in industry, right? When you look at the really smart, mature DevOps world, they're including it in the pipeline to the point, like I mentioned earlier, where you know what it's going to cost before you deploy it. So as the engineer is building it, it can help drive decisions as to what services and what things they can be using. Because if they've got a budget, right? Let's say, hey, your budget is this much. So you can make it as cool as you want, but don't go over the budget, right? Then that will drive some of the things that they're building in and how they're building that environment and deploying it. And knowing that up front, it could even lead to a decision. Because, hey, I'm just going to go over budget, but this is mission critical. Yeah, go for it, right? Or, this is going to go over budget, but it's really cool. Yeah, that's great, but save that for something else, right? We need the money for the mission. But that's exactly right. That is where we would love to get to. I think if you look at the software modernization across the department, there's been a lot of push towards DevOps and building those CI/CD pipelines and really maturing that process. This is the next step.
And the good news is the DevSecOps folks sit right next
with
to
us. They work with us. So we can yell,
we have
hey,
a very
FinOps,
close relationship.
FinOps.
Yeah.
Wear my FinOps hat.
Similar to the discussion around foreign allies. I think the DevSecOps team is waiting to see where we go with FinOps, and then it'll be an organic conversation about how do we implement this with them.
Yeah, I realize it's a controversial statement to say site reliability engineering is kind of a focus.
Yeah.
And I certainly did not solve all of our cloud FinOps issues by looking at SRE. But by the time I left my program, we had basically empowered the SRE role to also be that guardian from a product level. So each product team was responsible for their costs. Their SREs were the kind of the focus. And for my kind of single throat to choke, it was I'm going to work through my SRE leads and actually manage my costs by managing kind of how my SREs are implemented.
There has to be responsibility, fiscal responsibility, all the way down and all the way, from the top to the bottom, right? Because that individual that is building that thing can make smart decisions based on that, right? But they have to have that level of responsibility and that level of accountability, to be honest.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Another question? Or, one more question?
With J9, a hybrid cloud broker.
Okay. I've heard of you guys.
Yeah.
Really interesting what comes out of this, because a lot of the demand signal and product offerings that
Come a little closer to the mic, sorry.
Thanks.
How about this? Is that better?
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see what comes out of it and shared across, obviously, all of this and such. But a lot of the offerings and product owners that we have change their rates based on the information that you have here. Is it going to be metered? Is it reimbursable? Is it going to be a one-time thing? So it'd be really interesting to see what comes out of this and how that's going to shape the product offerings being supplied as well.
Well, and that's a great example, right? Because when you talk about the cost model, right, when you actually talk about the individual costs of those products, right, how do I ensure that I'm keeping within my costs, right, so my rates are correct, right? As they're charging rates for these individual services, right, they need to control those costs. And so this is vital to be able to control those costs, because if they don't, then they're going to blow their budget from a rate perspective and not be able to get that money back, right?
Yeah,
So
and even coming up with those rates, this data, the coming up with the rates need to be modernized as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and that's another thing, right? If I, as an organization, as a service provider, become better at what I'm doing and become more efficient, my rates could go down for my customers.
Yeah, I mean, be more competitive.
Imagine that, huh? How about that?
That sounds nice.
That would be great, right? But that's the reality.
Yeah.
And as the department gains more insights into what actually gets used and how and when, that also empowers the acquisition community to go and drive those bargains at the contract level when they engage with commercial, cloud providers. So, transparency and accountability, right? Those are the watchwords.
And as I said before, forecasting is something that's also a big time struggle. So
Yes.
very interested to see what comes out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Us too.
All right. Unbelievably, we've made it almost a whole hour. This has been a great audience.
Thank
Clearly,
you so
all the
much.
smart people came to this
That's
session.
right. Thank you.
Who cares about the service CIOs? Thank you. Thank you for attending, and we'll stick around afterwards if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you.